First thing first, all executive functions are executed in the name of president. This thing you need to remember. Are executed. Second thing, that president may prescribe the rules to be made to function, to do the function, okay, or to for these executive functions. So president may prescribe the rule for the same, and it is there in article 77. This question directly asked by UPSC, line to line they have picked up from what you say Bear Act, and they have asked this question. I think on this 77 or 78, I don't remember, but this kind of one question they have asked. President has very wide administrative power, military power, diplomatic and legislative power. We have already discussed these things. One more thing, that president must exercise its power as per the constitution according to article 53 clause 1. According to this article, all the executive power are vested in the president of India. Then we have article 74 clause 1. What does it talk about? It simply says that there will be a council of minister, and PM would be the head of COM, and it will aid and advise president. This is your ray diagram. PM headed by council of minister, aid and advice of president. Therefore, if any advice that is tendered by the council of minister to the president, it's a confidential in the nature. It cannot be inquired in any court of the law. The relationship between the president and council of minister is confidential. Before 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, there was no clear provision in the constitution that whether or not president bound by ministerial advice or not. Then this amendment changed the position. It said that it amended article 74, and it made it clear that the president shall be bound by the advice of COM. Now president is bound. He is bound by the advice of council of minister. Then came 44th Constitutional Amendment Act. Here it gave a chance to the president. It said that president can send back the advice to the council of minister for reconsideration. However, if again they are sending back to the president, then president is bound, and president will have to consider the advice given to them. Then article 75 clause 1 says that the prime minister shall be appointed by president. So prime minister will be, this is the president, he will appoint prime minister, and other minister will be appointed. So prime minister advice, and then appointment of other ministers. So this is the case, that prime minister will advise to the president, and then president will appoint other ministers. Then council of minister shall be collectively responsible as per 75 clause 3, collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. Now, one thing I want to tell you, we'll discuss collective responsibility when we'll be doing parliament in very detail. But for now, I want to tell you, they can use lot many terms. They can say the cabinet, they can say गवर्नमेंट. ज़्यादा सोचना नहीं है, सीधा आंसर लोकसभा करना है. और अगर इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में तभी लोकसभा करना है. अगर कुछ ऐसा आपको लगे कि क्वेश्चन नॉर्मल जनरल क्वेश्चन है और पार्लियामेंट्री सिस्टम पूछ रहे हैं, देन यू हैव टू आंसर what you have to answer. You have to answer just parliament. Now, one more thing I want to tell you. They can mention sometime that council of ministers shall be responsible. Sometime they cannot use this term collectively responsible. So keep in mind, still it's a correct statement. I have a question for you. Is there any restriction on the prime minister to choose his colleague? His colleague means ministers by the constitution. Tell me, is there any restriction by the. Please tell me. You have to answer in the chat box. Is there any restriction by the. Mhm. I'm saying in choosing. कोई कुछ क्वालिफिकेशन हो उनका, कुछ ऐसा हो, इस टाइप की कोई रेस्ट्रिक्शन हो, तो इस चीज़ को आप याद रखना. द कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन डज नॉट कंटेन एनी रेस्ट्रिक्शन ऑन प्राइम मिनिस्टर चॉइस ऑफ हिज कॉलीग. चूज करने के लिए बोल रहा हूँ मैं, ये थोड़ी बोल रहा हूँ कितने होने चाहिए, क्या होने चाहिए. क्वेश्चन आप समझा करो. आई आस्क्ड इन हिज चॉइस मेकिंग, इन चूजिंग. Ministers are nominee of the prime ministers. If sometime they can ask this kind of question that whether ministers are nominee of the prime minister or not. Yes, they are nominee of PM, and the constitution does not contain any restriction on the prime minister choice of his colleague. So this thing also very important. One more thing I want to tell you, that President of India administer oath to the Prime Minister, and also a minister takes oath before entering into the office, and this oath is administered by the President of India, and the form of oath is set out in the third schedule of the Constitution, 75 clause 4. So oath and affirmation, it's in 75, third schedule. Remember this thing. Then the salary and allowances of minister shall be decided by the President of India. This statement is correct or incorrect? Tell me, this statement is correct or incorrect?
सर show the question answer.
It's incorrect. ठीक है.
Yes, parliament.
हाँ, Parliament has the power, and accordingly Parliament brought Salaries and Allowances of Minister Act 1952, Now we'll talk about Prime Minister. He is the leader of the majority party in the Lok Sabha. According to 74, he is the head of the Council of Minister. There's this term called primes. I mean, this is a Latin proverb. Prime inter pares. Pairs, basically, whatever you want to pronounce it. So it means first among equals. What is the meaning of first among? The Prime Minister is first among equals. What is the meaning of first among equals?
So is it messy?
Pardon, come again. Am I audible or not?
Sir, the PM is also an MP. In that way, he is equal, but he is the leader of them. So that's why he's the first.
Who said this?
Me, Sir Manveen.
Okay. It's Manmin, whatever you said, it's perfectly okay. But I'll give you a better picture of it. It means that the president, the prime minister has the highest status among all the ministers. All right. So he is the first among equals. The highest status among all the equals, and that's the reason we call it head of the council of ministers. Now, if we talk about his function, then his main function is to aid and advise the president in exercise of his function. Second thing, he is real or chief executive, and we call him de facto head. The prime minister is having his personal secretariat under the allocation of business rule 1961. It occupies the status of a department of government of India. So remember this thing, that prime minister's personal secretariat has the status of a department of the government of India. This kind of question UPSC asks. Therefore, you need to remember this thing. If question is coming that whether the prime ministerial secretariat has the status of a department of government of India, this statement is correct or incorrect, then this statement is correct. Second thing, cabinet is the core of council of minister. Prime minister is chairman of Niti Aayog, that you know, and he is chairman of Tiger Conservation Authority. So please remember these things. Now we'll talk about deputy. We'll come back to prime minister again when we'll be talking about president discretion. But for now, I just want to talk about little bit more about deputy prime minister. So one thing, there is no post in constitution called deputy prime minister. One thing. Second thing, that how many deputy prime minister there have been so far, and who was the first and who was the last?
First, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel.
He was the first. Who was the last deputy prime minister?
So I think it was Lal Kishore Dwani.
Okay. So first was Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. The last one, L.K. Advani, and there have been 7 deputy prime ministers since independence, since 1947. Now we'll talk about, yes, and if the question is coming that the deputy prime minister is having the higher status than the minister, then it would be an incorrect statement, because he's just like a minister. That's what Supreme Court said, and he takes the same oath as minister does. We'll talk about president discretion. First thing I want to say, it's a limited one. Now I'll explain how. The role of president as a figurehead is reflected in his indirect election. We know that, आप सबको मैंने बता दिया था प्रेसिडेंट के इलेक्शन के बारे में कि कैसे प्रेसिडेंट के इलेक्शन के वोट को डिवाइड किया जाता है. आप सबको आता है कि नहीं?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Everyone, do you know? Sahin, yes. You don't know?
Yes, sir, I know.
Okay.
That's why.
Good, good. So, first thing that because of indirect election. Second thing, Constitution nowhere uses the term like discretion. If you get this kind of question, then please do remember the Constitution nowhere uses the term discretion and individual judgment. But if question is coming related to Governor General under the Government of India Act 1935, then yes, there were these two terms, discretion and individual judgment. These two terms were there in Government of India Act 1935 for Governor General or Viceroy, whatever you want to call. But in Indian Constitution, they are missing. सो इस चीज़ को आप याद रखना. अब आपको मैं बताता हूँ कि काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर की बात प्रेसिडेंट को क्यों माननी है और उसके पास डिस्क्रिशन बिल्कुल कम क्यों होता है. सबसे पहली बात है, काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर इज़ कलेक्टिवली रिस्पॉन्सिबल टू द लोकसभा एंड it is obligatory on the president to have always a council of minister. So let's say that if he dismiss any minister, and if that minister is having, let's say that if he dismiss the ministry, and as I have told you that it is obligatory on the president to have always council of minister, this thing keep in mind. Second thing, if he dismisses any ministry having support of Lok Sabha, what they'll do, they'll bring impeachment proceeding against him, right? And this serve as a deterrent against the president assuming real power, and that's the reason that president cannot assume real power. Third thing, president cannot incur any expenditure in case of conflict between him and council of minister, because do you know that council of minister is having the support of Lok Sabha, and the Lok Sabha, this parliament basically controls the executive primarily through authority over the purse. When I'm saying purse, matlab paisa, money. That's it. The power to levy and collect taxes. It cannot be done without the sanction of the parliament. And any amount incurred by the president without proper authorization of parliament would be unconstitutional. So these are the something I have told you that why can't president go against the council of minister. So far any doubt? Now we'll talk about discretion, very little or limited discretion where the president has the power. That is the appointment of prime minister. Right. Aksha, I want to ask one thing, that is there
Yes, sir.
anywhere in the constitution discretion and individual judgment defined or mentioned?
You're asking like the word discretion is defined, or you're asking the
Mm,
discretion of president is
yes,
given?
discretion for president. It is mentioned or not in the constitution?
No, sir. He has situational discretion,
No, no.
not constitutional.
Aksa, again I'll repeat the question. I'm asking,
Okay.
is there any term like discretion and individual judgment with regard to president in the constitution? This is my question.
No, sir.
Whether these
No,
two
sir.
terms are mentioned or not?
No, sir.
No.
No,
Okay,
sir. No.
very good. Now tell me one more thing. Whether these things were available for Governor General under the Government of India Act 1935 or not?
I'm not sure, sir, but I guess yes, he had some discretion. He had discretions.
No, no. I'm saying these terms were mentioned or not. That's what I'm asking.
Again terms. No, sir. I don't have any idea.
So I'll tell you that these two terms were mentioned in Government of India Act 1935. So remember this thing. If the comparison, sometime the question can be framed that how the president position is different from the Governor General or Viceroy under the Government of India Act 1935, because lot many provision we have taken. So this is one difference.
Okay, sir.
All right. Now, as I have told you, that Prime Minister has been described as keystone of the cabinet arc. If you want, you can note down this line. Who is central to its formation, center to its life and center to its death. अभी प्राइम मिनिस्टर है तो कैबिनेट और काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर रहेगी, प्राइम मिनिस्टर नहीं है तो उसको भी रिज़ाइन करना पड़ेगा. इस चीज़ को आप लोग समझ लो. अगर एक कोई इंडिविजुअल मिनिस्टर रिज़ाइन करता है, इफ एनी इंडिविजुअल मिनिस्टर रिज़ाइनिंग, देन द काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर वुड सर्वाइव. बट इफ प्राइम मिनिस्टर रिजाइंस, देन काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर वुड नॉट सर्वाइव. फिर तो दोबारा से ही बनानी पड़ेगी. सो क्या बता रहा था मैं आपको? Yes. So I was telling you that he is the keystone of the cabinet arc, and therefore he must be a person who can secure colleague, and with his colleague he must sure of the support of popular house of parliament, that is Lok Sabha. That means that prime minister plus his council of minister should be able to secure the support of Lok Sabha. The system of parliamentary democracy or parliamentary government. The terms can be used interchangeably, therefore, do not get confused. Parliamentary democracy, parliamentary system, or parliamentary government requires that the PM, along with his colleague, not only be responsible to the lower house but shall be able to justify his policy in parliament. Listen carefully. In first statement, I am using the term responsible. In second statement, in second part in the of the statement, what I am using, I am saying that they should be able to justify his policy in parliament. Hopefully you understand the difference between these two. अभी कोई पॉलिसी है तो राज्यसभा में आके प्राइम मिनिस्टर बोलते हैं कि नहीं बोलते हैं, आप ही बताओ. Recently, you must have seen that Prime Minister is coming to the Rajya Sabha and he is speaking there for this women reservation bill. Have you noticed that or not?
Yes, sir.
So they have to justify in the other house also. It doesn't mean कि भाई एक ही house के लिए वो responsible है. So they'll be just telling all those things in the Lok Sabha. No, they'll have to justify their position in the other house also, and that means in the entire parliament they have to justify their position. Okay, now get back to our topic. Appointment of the Prime Minister is one act which the President performs in his discretion, without the aid and advice of Council of Minister or the Prime Minister. But you see in normal circumstances means 2014 and 2019 right now. I'm just talking in these two contexts. Who got the majority, clear cut majority? BJP. Okay. So if a political party, in this case BJP, has attained absolute majority in the Lok Sabha. When I'm saying absolute majority, what does it mean? How many seats? 273, I guess. This is the absolute majority of Lok Sabha,
Yes.
right? 273. So if any party has attained absolute majority in the Lok Sabha, then the president has no choice or discretion but to invite the recognized leader of that party and appoint him the minister. And this is the principal limitation in practice on the president's choice of prime minister. But what happens if no single party gains absolute or workable majority and coalition government has to be formed? Then what happens? In this case, the president exercises a little discretion. What he does, he select the leader of any party, and in his opinion, he thinks that it can form a stable government. And in accordance with the highest democratic tradition and in the interest of establishing healthy convention, prime minister what prime minister has to do, then the prime minister, so president has appointed prime minister, but what prime minister has to do, prime minister has to seek a vote of confidence in Lok Sabha at the earliest. Even such a situation, that is the case of hung parliament. Now we have seen the case of hung parliament. Do you know what is hung parliament?
No majority.
Yes, no one is getting
Single part.
हाँ, किसी को single absolute majority नहीं मिला है. No one is getting absolute majority. So even in this situation also, the president action is guided by certain convention. Then what president would do? President usually seeks to put in office a prime minister who is uh, able to gain majority support in the house, and this is also the same position in Britain also. Same position, there is this kind of position is there in the Britain also, that when no party has a overall majority in the house, then the king, earlier they used to have queen, but now king will have to decide who has a reasonable respect of maintaining himself in the house. And in view of the fact that the framer of Constitution of India have adopted British cabinet system, and therefore this kind of convention is operating under the English Constitution, and same we have borrowed from there. So what would happen? I'll tell you some story also, some sort of example or maybe story, whatever you want to consider it. That first, in the case of defeat of ruling party in the lower house by a no confidence motion. Very important thing I am telling you. Please listen carefully. Do you know what is no confidence motion? If it pass, it means that house does not have confidence in that political party. बहुत सिंपल शब्दों में आपको समझाता हूँ. अगर आप 273 वोट्स सिक्योर नहीं कर पाए पार्लियामेंट में, आपके अगेंस्ट नो कॉन्फिडेंस मोशन पास हो गया. इफ़ यू आर अनेबल टू सिक्योर 273 वोट्स इन पार्लियामेंट, then the no confidence motion will be considered passed. All right, this is the simple meaning you have to understand. So in this case, what happened, that if ruling party, so let's suppose recently what happened, recently in last session of parliament, no confidence motion came against the government. Do you know this thing or not?
Yes.
Okay, so no confidence motion, what happened in that no confidence motion?
So government is still in the parliament means it was failed.
It was failed.
They have.
Tell me the incident when no confidence motion was passed, if you can recall.
Yes, sir. Just a minute. In Atal Bihari Vajpayee government.
Yes, in Atal Bihari Vajpayee government.
So by one vote. If I
Yes. अब जो भी है, we are not going into that. But we are just we'll be sticking to our concept. So here the confidence motion brought by Congress and allied. Some parties said earlier Atal Bihari Vajpayee, I mean that we'll support you, but later on they didn't support, and the government fall. So here the first case is that ruling party in the lower house by a no confidence motion. Then president, what president has to do? The president, these are the convention I am telling you. See, when we were talking about initially convention, constitution and everything, I have told you that there are a lot many convention that play a role, though they are not mentioned in the constitution, but in the constitutional scheme they play the role. So this is one of the convention. Then president should invite the leader of opposition to explore the possibility of forming a stable ministry. I'll tell you who has done it. It was done by the president Sri Neelam Sanjeeva Reddy. He invited YV Chavan. YV Chavan, the leader of opposition, to form the government after Morarji Desai tendered his resignation in 1979. However, after 4 days of hectic activities, YV Chavan informed the president that he is unable to form the government. So this is the one case. Let's talk about second possibility. Secondly, where none of parties has attended absolute majority in the Lok Sabha, the president may invite the leader of single largest party to form the government. Again, I'll repeat. Let's say that no one could get 273, but someone secured 200 seats, or someone secured, let's say, 230, and this is the highest number of seats one party got. Then president would may invite the leader of single largest party to form government. So there was this incident in 1991. The president invited Mr. Narasimha Rao, the leader of Congress party, which was the single largest party, to form the government. Similarly, after the 6th general election, the president appointed Mr. Bajpayee. So we were talking about Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Mr. Bajpayee, the leader of BJP, which was the single largest party. Then what president did? President said, okay, now I have appointed you prime minister. You are being given 13 days to prove the majority in the Lok Sabha. And here he was unable to prove it. Alright? Then, 7th general election happened in 1998, and the president again appointed Mr. Bajpayee, the leader of single largest party. This time, BJP was able to prove the majority in the Lok Sabha. So, two cases I have told you. I'll tell you the third case. If two or more parties form a coalition government, coalition government means that no one is getting majority, but two people are saying we are coming together, and their total number is more than either 273 or more than this. In the election, the acknowledged leader of such a coalition, so they'll decide among themselves, आपस में decide कर लेंगे किसको बनाना है, should be invited to form the government. This had happened in 1977. Mr. Morarji Desai, the leader of Janata Party, a coalition of several parties who fought election on the common platform, formed the government. अभी जैसे आपको बताऊंगा इसी के बारे में डिस्कस करता हूँ. Similarly, in 1989, Mr. B.P. Singh, the leader of Janata Dal, a national front consisting of several local and national parties, was invited to form the government. सो एक कोलिशन गवर्नमेंट हो गई. अब आप लोगों ने थोड़ा, जो लोग पॉलिटिक्स में रुचि रखते होंगे, पॉलिटिक्स मतलब जो बीजेपी कांग्रेस चलता है, तो आपने एक इंडिया अलायंस के बारे में सुना होगा. यू मस्ट हैव हर्ड अबाउट इंडिया अलायंस, राइट?
Yes, sir.
सो आपको ये तो पता है कि इंडिया अलायंस है, तो यहाँ कोलिशन की गवर्नमेंट ही आएगी. एक को तो किसी को बहुत ही मुश्किल है, बिकॉज द वे दे विल डिवाइड द सीट्स itself it will create coalition government, right? My point is, though there are very very ephemeral chances of winning India alliances, in my opinion, I'm sorry, uh, I shouldn't give you my political opinion, but that's what I feel, that they are not strong enough right now. I don't know about what happens 1 year down the line. So let's suppose good days for these people, and if they are able to win the election, then the same thing will happen. They'll decide, the coalition will decide the leader, and then let's see that who will become the prime minister. But this is the possibility in 2029. Maybe India Alliance can win. Let's talk about the fourth. And sorry, I'm not giving you just whatever I'm seeing, I'm just making the observation. No political inclination towards anyone. The next one, the president should invite the leader of the coalition. This is the fourth position I'm telling you, or alliance formed after the election to form the government. So in 1996, what happened after the sixth general election? Mr. Deve Gowda, who was elected the leader of United Front, there were 13 parties, consisting 13 parties, formed after the election, was invited and appointed the prime minister by the president. Then the United Front secured the requisite majority with the help of outside support from the Congress party. And it may be noted that the president had first invited BJP here, the single largest party, in the sixth general election to form the government. On BJP government's failure to prove the majority, the president invited the leader of United Front, a post-poll alliance, and there was no pre-poll alliance which had secured absolute majority in the election. So this is the case that this has happened, that for some time he was the prime minister, then again government fall, then there was general election, and then Prime Minister Bajpayee, Mr. Bajpayee became the prime minister. So these were the things that I have told you. Now we'll move our discussion to different dimension. Hopefully you are fine with all these things. Any doubt? Okay, let's talk about the next point. Dismissal of a minister or cabinet. Minister hold office during the pleasure of president. I'm talking about ministers. But president is bound to exercise his pleasure in accordance with the prime minister's advice, and therefore it is a power of prime minister against his undesirable colleagues. Remember this thing. Then collective responsibility implies that council of ministers is responsible to the Lok Sabha, a body for the general conducted of the affairs of government. The council of ministers is entirely made collective responsible to the house, and it ensures the smooth functioning of the democratic machinery. The council of ministers work as a team. Remember this thing, and all decisions taken by the cabinet are joint decision of all its ministers, no matter whatever be their personal differences. अभी गडकरी साहब कुछ और कह सकते हैं, राजनाथ सिंह कुछ और कह सकते हैं, अमित शाह कुछ और कह सकते हैं, बट ये आपस में ही बात कर सकते हैं, बट जो फाइनल डिसीजन होगा वो इनको डिफेंड करना पड़ेगा. So once a decision has been taken by it, it is the duty of each and every minister to stand by it and support it both in the legislature and outside. Any doubt? Second thing, as soon as ministry loses the confidence of house or is defeated or any question of policy, it must resign. If a no confidence motion is passed against any one minister, the entire council of minister must resign. Remember this thing. इसीलिए एक मिनिस्टर को रिजाइन करवा देते हैं. And if any minister does not agree with the majority decision of the council of minister, his option is to resign or accept the majority decision. If he does not, then prime minister would drop him from his cabinet, and therefore ensure collective responsibility. And this is the great weapon in the hands of the prime minister, through which he maintains unity and discipline in his colleague. तो अब आपको समझ में आ गया होगा कि प्राइम मिनिस्टर क्यों इतना पावरफुल होता है. आर यू अंडरस्टैंडिंग द पॉइंट? अभी आप नहीं मानोगे प्राइम मिनिस्टर की बात तो आपको हटा दिया जाएगा.
सर एक बार वो वाला पॉइंट रिपीट कर दीजिए ना, जहाँ पे आपने बोला एक सिंगल मिनिस्टर के अगेंस्ट अगर नो कॉन्फिडेंस मोशन पास होता है.
हाँ, तो मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ. इफ अ नो कॉन्फिडेंस मोशन इज पास्ड अगेंस्ट एनी वन मिनिस्टर, द इंटायर काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर हैज टू रिजाइन.
ओके ओके.
But I'll give you a clarification. The clarification is that, along with the principle of collective responsibility, so this is coming under the collective responsibility. Now I'm giving you clarification, and it will make things more clear for you. Along with the principle of collective responsibility, the principle of individual responsibility of each minister to parliament also works. What does it mean? That every minister has to answer question regarding. Now I'm talking in the context of individual responsibility. What is the individual responsibility? Listen carefully. First, that every minister has to questions answer questions regarding the affairs of his department in the parliament. Second, he cannot throw the responsibility of his department either on official or on another minister. ऐसा नहीं होगा कि भाई किसी और मिनिस्टर को बोल दिया कि आप इसके डिपार्टमेंट का, फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर से क्वेश्चन पूछा गया है, एक्सटर्नल मिनिस्टर उसका जवाब दे रहा है. दिस कैन नॉट हैपन. हाँ, अगर कैबिनेट मिनिस्टर इज नॉट देयर देन स्टेट मिनिस्टर कैन reply, but the state minister would be from finance only. And if the minister has taken action with the cabinet's approval, the principle of collective responsibility applies. Remember this thing. If he has taken any action with the approval of with the approval of council of minister, then the principle of collective responsibility will apply, and the whole cabinet. So ये तो समझ में आ रहा है जो मैं पहले बोल रहा था.
हाँ सर.
क्लैरिफिकेशन ए है ये, उसका क्लैरिफिकेशन यहाँ आ रहा है कि वहाँ उसके पास इफ एनीवन कोई मिनिस्टर कर रहा है और उसके अगेंस्ट आ रहा है तो वो ही इज वर्किंग ऑन द बिहाफ ऑफ होल कैबिनेट. देन द प्रिंसिपल ऑफ collective responsibility applies, and the whole cabinet should support and defend his action. However, if the minister has taken action without the cabinet approval, the cabinet may or may not support him. In case of non-support, the minister has to go and not the whole cabinet. समझ में आया कि नहीं?
Yes sir, now it's clear.
सेकेंड थिंग, अब एक चीज़ और आपको बताता हूँ. अब ऐसा नहीं होगा कि द कैबिनेट बेसिकली द कैबिनेट कैन नॉट रिटेन द मिनिस्टर एंड एट द सेम टाइम कंटेंट दैट रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी इज ऑल हिज. उसको ड्रॉप करना पड़ जाएगा. I have a question for you. So, you know that there is no doubt about the president power to dismiss ministry that has lost the confidence of Lok Sabha. But can president dismiss such ministry which enjoy the confidence of Lok Sabha but has the lost can president dismiss this kind of ministry on his own?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you? I have a question. One minute.
Can you repeat the question?
Question was simple that let's say that can president dismiss any minister? I mean, it has not proven in the Lok Sabha, but he thinks that he lost the confidence. Then on his own, can president dismiss any minister?
No, sir.
Okay. Now I have a question for you. Let's say that a ministry is enjoying the confidence of legislative assembly of state. Then can this ministry be dismissed?
So this is a state ministry?
Yes, legislative assembly of state.
Sir, in general, no.
Cannot be dismissed, sir.
अरे कर सकता है. इन जनरल ज़्यादा सोचने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. पॉलिटिक्स नहीं लाना है. अगर क्वेश्चन आपसे आ जाए कि इफ अ मिनिस्ट्री एंजॉय द कॉन्फिडेंस ऑफ state legislative assembly, can it be dismissed by the president or not? Then answer would be simple, yes, it can be dismissed.
Emergency.
अब वो कुछ भी होगा उसको बाद में डिस्कस करेंगे. ठीक है. अभी
मतलब ये आंसर शुड बी यस.
आंसर शुड बी यस. ठीक है. Now let's talk about dissolution of Lok Sabha. आप लोग बोर तो नहीं हो गए? Are you people bored? I'll take 15 minutes and
No, sir.
this topic will be over. So, dissolution of Lok Sabha. Now, so long as Prime Minister and his cabinet enjoy confidence, the President is bound to dissolve Lok Sabha only when advised by the Prime Minister. If, again I am repeating, if the Prime Minister is having the confidence or the Council of Ministers is having the confidence of Lok Sabha, then the President can only dissolve the Lok Sabha when Prime Minister advise for the same. But this advice will not be binding on the President. When Prime Minister lose his majority, first thing, or unable to prove his majority, or a vote of no confidence passed against him, when he is not facing the parliament but President has proved that ruling party does not have a majority. If they have majority, then it's fine. Then President will be bound to listen what Prime Minister is saying and he can dissolve. But अगर पता चल गया, आपको मालूम है डिसॉल्व क्यों करवाते हैं? डू यू नो दैट डिसॉल्व क्यों करवाएंगे वो लोग? टेल मी.
फॉर इलेक्शंस, ताकि
एग्जैक्टली.
अपोजिशन फिर पार्टी नहीं बना मतलब
हाँ,
गवर्नमेंट नहीं बना ले।
बिल्कुल. तो अगर उनको लगता है कि इनके पास, देखो जरूरी नहीं है कि नो कॉन्फिडेंस मोशन पास हो, बट इफ प्रेसिडेंट नोज दिस थिंग और ही हैज सम सॉर्ट ऑफ क्रेडिबल इंफॉर्मेशन कि इनके पास सपोर्ट नहीं है, एंड देन द एग्जिस्टिंग प्राइम मिनिस्टर recommends the president that please dissolve it. President is not bound to dissolve the parliament. इस चीज़ को आप अच्छे से याद रखना. ये कुछ ऐसी चीज़ें हैं जो आपको याद रखना है. समझ में आ रहा है मैं क्या कह रहा हूँ? श्वेता, समझ में आया?
Yes, sir.
ठीक है, जिसको समझ में नहीं आया प्लीज़ रेज योर हैंड. ठीक है. सो इस चीज़ को आप याद रखना, क्योंकि वो तो चाहेगा प्राइम मिनिस्टर कि भाई डिजॉल्व कर दो, डिजॉल्व करके फिर इलेक्शन करवाओ तो उसको कुछ चांस मिले. सो व्हाट president will be doing, that president will try to find alternative ministry if it is possible, and he'll make all efforts to avoid a midterm poll. Now next thing we'll talk about communication with the prime minister.
तो ये लास्ट लाइन क्या बोला आपने, ये नहीं समझ में आया.
मैं ये कह रहा हूँ कि वो जितने बेस्ट पॉसिबल एफर्ट्स हैं करेगा ताकि मिड टर्म पोल नहीं हो. मिड टर्म पोल का मतलब बीच में इलेक्शन ना हो जाए.
अच्छा ठीक है.
Communication with prime minister. Article 78 provides for the same. It says it shall be duty of prime minister to communicate to the president. क्या है प्राइम मिनिस्टर की ड्यूटी? ड्यूटी ऑफ पीएम व्हाट? communicate what? Communicate decision of what? Council of Ministers decision. For what matter? Matter relating to administration or affairs of union or proposal for legislation. ये चीज़ें हैं. कोई एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन से रिलेटेड कोई अफेयर है उसको कम्युनिकेट करना है. देन अगर प्रपोजल, कोई लेजिस्लेशन लाने को प्रपोज कर रहे हैं, तो ये सब अपने डिसीजन प्रेसिडेंट को कम्युनिकेट करना पड़ेगा. सेकंड थिंग, इफ़ एनी रिपोर्ट प्रेसिडेंट इज़ आस्किंग फॉर, प्रेसिडेंट ने कहा भाई एक रिपोर्ट लेके आओ या कोई इन्फॉर्मेशन बताओ हमें, तो ये बताना पड़ेगा. So it is a very important thing for successful working of the principle of collective responsibility. ये 78 में इस चीज़ को आप समझ लेना. अब आपको अगर गॉसिप पसंद है तो आई कैन टेल यू सम गॉसिप ऑल्सो. शुड आई टेल यू? शुड आई और शुड आई नॉट? कुछ तो आप बोलते ही नहीं हो आप लोग.
Yes, sir. Tell.
ठीक है. So what happened? There was this controversy regarding the president's position and his relation with Prime Minister, and it was raised during the tenure of President Gyani Jail Singh and Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. The controversy mainly arose due to the mistrust created by Prime Minister not meeting the President frequently. क्या हो रहा था? राजीव गांधी जी प्रेसिडेंट से मुलाकात ही नहीं कर रहे थे और ना ही उन्हें बता रहे थे कि क्या चल रहा है. पर्टिकुलरली प्रेसिडेंट ने पूछा बोफोर्स गन डील के बारे में. जो बोफोर्स, आप लोगों ने बोफोर्स घोटाला, इस टाइप का बोफोर्स स्कीम तो सुनी रखा होगा. किसने नहीं सुना? हैवंट यू हर्ड अबाउट बोफोर्स स्कैम? ठीक है, अभी मैं आपको ये नहीं बता रहा हूँ कि क्या है बोफोर्स, बस इतना ही समझ लो, आपने सुना होगा. सो इसको लेके एक मिसट्रस्ट हो गया राजीव गांधी और उनके बीच में, तो ये क्राइसिस टाइप का क्रिएट हो गया था, बट फिर चीज़ें धीरे धीरे सॉर्ट आउट हुई. सो मैं आपको ये बताना चाहता हूँ कि द प्रेसिडेंट हैज़ अ राइट टू नो व्हाट हिज गवर्नमेंट इज़ डूइंग और प्रपोज टू डू. पहला, क्या कर रही है, व्हाट आर यू डूइंग, एंड व्हाट यू वांट टू डू और व्हाट यू प्रपोज टू डू. ये दोनों चीज़ें प्रेसिडेंट को पता होनी चाहिए. अब ये कौन डिसाइड करेगा कितनी इन्फॉर्मेशन देनी है? आप बताओ. It is the prerogative of the Prime Minister that how much information is to be furnished to the President of India, and it is the matter that has to be resolved by a mutual confidence and cooperation between the two. ठीक है. सो यहाँ आपका प्रेसिडेंट के बारे में मैंने आपको बहुत बहुत चीज़ें बता दी हैं. अब और कुछ सुनना है आपको कि इसको यहीं ख़त्म कर दें? बस यहाँ आज आपका सेशन कंप्लीट है आज के लिए.